There comes a moment, subtle at first, almost imperceptible, when everything you believed yourself to be begins to crumble. Not because of some external catastrophe, but because the foundations of your identity quietly lose their grip. What once felt certain, your roles, your beliefs, your ambitions, even your image of who you are, starts to dissolve like fog under light. At first it feels like failure. The job you thought would define you no longer matters. The relationship that once gave you purpose fades. The dreams that once burned now flicker without fire. You try to reignite them, but nothing responds. The machinery of meaning stalls. That's when the fear begins. It's not the fear of death, it's the fear of disappearance. The terror of realizing that everything you called me was just a story. Jung called this stage the dissolution of the persona, the collapse of the mask that allowed us to function in society. He wrote that it feels like the end of the world, because in a way it is. It's the end of the world as seen through the narrow eyes of the ego. The ego has spent a lifetime building its fortress, walls of identity, towers of control, mirrors of validation. But life, in its relentless honesty, eventually knocks on the door, not to destroy you, but to free you from confinement. At first you resist. You cling to old narratives. I am this. I am that. I must be someone. But the words sound hollow now, echoing through the ruins of belief. Something deeper inside whispers. Who is saying that? Who is the one behind the name? This is the beginning of the end, and the end of the beginning. The death of the ego doesn't arrive with violence. It arrives with exhaustion. You've been trying to hold the sky in your hands, and suddenly you realize you can't. The effort collapses. You fall, and in that falling, something strange happens. Relief. For the first time, you glimpse the space between thoughts. The silence behind the noise of self-definition. It's terrifying and peaceful at once. The mind screams, if I'm not this person, then who am I? But the silence doesn't answer. It just watches. Jung once wrote, "You meet yourself in the most devastating defeat." He understood that collapse is the first grace, the necessary destruction of illusion. Because the ego, for all its brilliance, is not life itself. It is only the temporary shape life takes to know itself. When that shape cracks, life flows out again. The collapse is not chaos, it's liberation in disguise. But in the moment you can't see that. All you feel is loss. Like standing in a house that used to be yours, now empty, walls echoing with memories that no longer belong to you. You wander through the rooms of your own mind and find only questions. Who am I without my name? Without my success? Without my pain? The silence answers with its own question. Who were you before you needed to be anyone? That's the door the collapse opens, the doorway back to being. But before you cross it, everything false must burn. And so begins the death of the ego. Not a sudden death, but a slow unraveling. The peeling away of every mask, every certainty, until only awareness remains. It is not destruction, it is revelation. The collapse isn't the end of you. It's the end of the one you thought you were. After the collapse comes the instinct to rebuild. The ego cannot bear the void. It rushes to restore what's familiar. You feel it in your body, the impulse to grasp, to name, to define. Anything is better than nothing. The mind begins its desperate negotiation. Maybe I can fix this. Maybe I can still be who I was. But you can't, because the one who is trying to fix the broken self is part of what is breaking. Jung wrote, "The greatest sin of the ego is the illusion of control. It believes it can manage existence, that by organizing life perfectly, by controlling others, by mastering the inner world, it can avoid the unknown. But the unknown is not the enemy, it's the truth. You try to reassemble your identity like pieces of a shattered mirror, but every shard reflects something different. You no longer recognize the face staring back. You post the photos, wear the mask, repeat the affirmations, but the echo inside whispers, this isn't real anymore. The ego's resistance is ancient. It was born to protect you, to keep you safe from the chaos of the unconscious, from the flood of feeling and uncertainty. But protection, when it lasts too long, becomes prison. That's the irony of control. It promises safety, but delivers suffocation. The more tightly you hold on, the more life slips through your fingers. You start to feel the exhaustion of pretending. You realize that all control is a form of fear, fear of dissolution, of silence, of being nothing. Yet nothingness is precisely where freedom waits. In myth, this is the moment when the hero resists surrender. Buddha clings to the last illusions beneath the Bodhi tree. Christ pleads in Gethsemane, "Let this cup pass from me." Every story of awakening passes through this trembling threshold, the moment before acceptance, when resistance screams its loudest. The ego doesn't die peacefully. It dies fighting. It tells you that without it, you'll vanish. It paints freedom as death, stillness as failure. And so you keep moving, keep planning, keep controlling, as if action could drown out truth. But deep down, you know, no amount of control can stop what's already ending. Jung compared this process to the serpent shedding its skin. The old identity has to die so that something new can grow beneath. But the serpent doesn't know if it will survive the shedding. It only knows it must. Control then is the last stand of fear. The ego doesn't understand that what's dying is not life, but illusion. The self, that vast intelligence within, orchestrates the dismantling with precision. Every loss, every uncertainty, every silence is part of the sacred surgery. The pain of ego death isn't punishment. It's resistance meeting truth. The harder you fight, the more it hurts. The moment you stop fighting, it softens. That's when a strange realization appears. The things you were most afraid to lose, reputation, power, control, were never yours. They were borrowed costumes. What's real cannot be taken. And so the ego begins to tire. The illusions of mastery start to flicker. You feel the cracks widening, not as destruction, but as light. Something inside whispers, "Let go." But the voice of fear still insists, "If I let go, I'll fall apart." And perhaps you will. But what if that's the point? The ego believes it's dying, but it's only being returned to its right place. As servant, not master. It doesn't vanish, it surrenders. Control was never peace, it was a performance. And now the curtain is falling. Behind it, something vast and silent waits. After the collapse, after the struggle, comes the stillness. Not peace, not yet, but stillness. A silence so vast it feels like space itself has swallowed you. There are no names here. No roles, no goals, no story. Only awareness, stripped, naked, unanchored. You look for something to hold on to, but there is nothing left. The mind, accustomed to movement, panics. It searches for identity, for form, for meaning, and finds only emptiness. You whisper, "Who am I now?" And the silence answers, "Who is asking?" This is the void, the sacred pause between death and rebirth. Every mystic, every philosopher, every soul that has truly awakened has passed through this space. Jung called it the night sea journey. St. John called it the dark night of the soul. It is the place where consciousness floats without anchor, where meaning dissolves into mystery. The void terrifies the ego because it cannot function here. There's nothing to compare, to achieve, to control. It's the death of narrative, the disappearance of me. But beneath the fear lies something the ego never knew: freedom. In the void, you begin to realize that existence doesn't need your story to exist. The world continues. The wind moves, the stars burn, the body breathes, without the constant commentary of I. You watch life unfolding without interference, and it's still beautiful, maybe even more beautiful. At first, the emptiness feels unbearable, a kind of psychological suffocation. But slowly, imperceptibly, it becomes spacious. You start to sense that the void isn't empty. It's full, not of things, but of potential. It's the womb of creation itself, the silent field where all forms are born and to which all forms return. Jung once wrote, "In the deepest abyss I found grace." That's what the void reveals. That grace was never above or beyond, but beneath, waiting patiently under the rubble of identity. Here there's no one left to achieve enlightenment. No self to save, no past to fix, no future to chase. The mind finally runs out of places to go. And in that exhaustion, something extraordinary happens. You stop running. You sit in the nothingness. You let it engulf you. And for the first time you realize, the one who is aware of the void is not lost. The observer remains. Who is that observer? It doesn't speak, it doesn't think, it just is. This is the beginning of true consciousness. Awareness unbound from identity. The witness that has watched every rise and fall, every joy and grief, every thought and silence. The self, Jung would say, has stepped forward. It feels strange, almost holy to be no one. You are no longer the actor in the play. You are the space in which the play unfolds. You're the screen, not the movie. You're the ocean, not the wave. And in that recognition, something breaks open. Not outward, but inward. A tenderness, a clarity, a quiet awe. You see that nothing was ever missing. The void wasn't death, it was the space of life before it takes form. You realize that everything you once feared, loss, emptiness, uncertainty, was just the mind's way of naming what it couldn't understand: infinity. The void then is not the absence of being, it's the absence of illusion. You haven't fallen out of life. You've fallen out of your story about life, and what's left is pure presence. At first there was only emptiness, a vast stillness, neither light nor dark, just endless presence. But then something subtle shifts. You notice that the silence itself is aware. It's not a thought, it's not a voice. It's a seeing, ancient, wordless, steady. And suddenly you understand. You are not the storm that destroyed your identity. You are the sky that held it. This is the awakening of the observer. The self that watches without judgment. The quiet center that has never been wounded, never been born, never died. Jung called it the God within us, not as metaphor but as fact. The divine spark of pure awareness that lives underneath the noise of personality. It's strange at first to sense yourself without form. There's no story, no past, no image to hold. Only presence, silent, luminous, infinite. You realize now that everything you have ever called my life was happening within this awareness. The thoughts, the emotions, the victories, the heartbreaks, all waves rising and falling on the surface of something vast and unmoving. You were never lost in them. You were lost as them. The ego dies when awareness stops identifying with its contents. The observer awakens the moment you recognize, I am not this thought, I am the one who sees it. From that realization, a new kind of peace emerges. Not the peace of comfort, but the peace of clarity. You begin to see that even suffering has always been taking place inside something untouched. The pain was real, but it never defined you. Jung wrote that the self is both the center and the circumference, the axis of consciousness and the total field that surrounds it. It's not limited to your personal life. It includes everything. Every person, every shadow, every heartbeat is a reflection of the same living consciousness looking back at itself. You begin to notice it everywhere, in the movement of wind through trees, in the silence between words, in the eyes of a stranger. It's all the same awareness, mirrored infinitely. The observer doesn't reject the world, it includes it. It watches thought, emotion, chaos, and remains still. You start to feel what the mystics meant when they said, "Be still and know that I am." It wasn't a command to worship. It was an invitation to remember. This awareness, this pure witness, has been here since before your first memory. It watched your childhood. It watched your heartbreaks. It watched your collapse. It is watching now. You realize it has no agenda, no desire, no fear. It doesn't seek perfection because it already is. The moment you rest in it, the world softens. You stop trying to control life and start participating in it. This is what Jung meant by individuation, the integration of the ego with the self, the small self finally surrendering to the greater whole. The awakening of the observer is not detachment, it's intimacy. You're not escaping life, you're feeling it completely without distortion. It's a paradox. You're both inside the experience and outside it. You laugh and cry as one who knows the dream and the dreamer are one. The observer doesn't erase the ego, it redeems it. The ego becomes a servant again, a useful mask in the play of existence, but now the actor knows it's a role. The awakening is quiet. There are no fireworks, no visions, just the unmistakable realization. I am the awareness behind everything. And from that stillness, compassion flows naturally, because you see that everyone else, even those lost in fear, control, or illusion, is also that same awareness, temporarily dreaming a different dream. When the observer awakens, you stop fighting the play. You begin to dance. When the observer awakens, the world doesn't disappear. It deepens. Light and shadow, joy and sorrow, chaos and stillness, all remain, but their war ends. You begin to see that opposites were never enemies. They were partners in a larger dance, two halves of the same eternal rhythm. Jung called this the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred marriage of opposites. It is the heart of individuation, the moment when the psyche realizes that wholeness is not achieved by choosing one side of existence, but by embracing both. You don't become light by rejecting the dark. You become whole by including it. The ego always wanted purity, the clean, the certain, the good. The self seeks totality, the wild, the broken, the divine, the human, all at once. You start to notice it everywhere. Day and night, inhale and exhale, birth and decay. The universe breathes through opposites. Even stars are born from collapse. Creation and destruction are not contradictions. They are one motion seen from different angles. The mind used to dividing tries to understand, but understanding isn't enough. It must be lived. To unite opposites, you must allow them to coexist within you. You begin to sense that your pain and your peace are made of the same substance, that love and fear are two vibrations of the same current, that what you once called me and the world are inseparable. The self, this silent awareness that now guides you, has no preference. It watches both light and dark, success and failure, pleasure and loss with the same compassionate gaze. And you realize that's what love actually is, not attachment to one side, but the space that holds them all. Jung said, "The paradox is one of our most valuable spiritual possessions." He understood that the divine speaks in paradox, that the truth is always two things at once. You are both mortal and eternal, fragile and infinite, a drop in the ocean. The union of opposites is not something you do. It happens when resistance ends. When you stop trying to be only light, life reveals its wholeness. In that wholeness, guilt dissolves. You forgive yourself not because you were right, but because you finally see that everything had its place, even the mistakes, even the darkness. This realization doesn't make you passive. It makes you humble. You stop trying to fix reality and start participating in it consciously. You let life move through you without interference. The mystics called this the sacred balance. The alchemists called it the rubedo, the red dawn, when the opposites fuse and the soul shines with its own light. Jung saw it as the completion of the circle, the realization that the divine is not separate from the human, that heaven and earth meet inside your chest. You begin to live with paradox instead of fleeing from it. You can cry while smiling. You can love even what once hurt you. You can see beauty in decay, because now you see through the eyes of the self, the eyes that see unity everywhere. It's not that darkness disappears, it's that you no longer fear it. It's not that pain ends, it's that you recognize it as the shadow of love. The war between what is and what should be ends. What remains is peace, not perfection, but participation. This is the quiet miracle of the union of opposites. You stop seeking God in heaven and find Him in contradiction. In the same moment that you break, you also bloom. In the same silence that kills the ego, the soul begins to sing. And that song, half sorrow, half joy, is the sound of wholeness. After the storm of opposites, a new silence descends. Not empty this time, but full. Something is being born within you, not as an idea, but as a pulse. It feels familiar, yet untouched, like meeting yourself for the first time. This is the birth of the true self. Not the improved ego, not the enlightened personality, but the quiet realization of what has always been underneath. Awareness, presence, being. You no longer need to define yourself. You simply are. Jung described this as individuation, the process by which the human becomes whole, when the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow, unite under the guidance of the self. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. In this space, authenticity flows naturally. You speak without calculation. You act without effort. Life moves through you like wind through trees, without resistance, without manipulation. You are not trying to be spiritual anymore. You are simply awake. The death of the ego was not the end. It was the clearing. Now the self can inhabit the space the ego once guarded. You start to see that the true self doesn't live in isolation. It is deeply connected to everything. When you breathe, you feel the rhythm of existence breathing with you. When you look into another's eyes, you recognize yourself there. The boundaries between I and you, between inner and outer, begin to dissolve. The world hasn't changed. Your relationship with it has. Where you once saw threat, you now see reflection. Where you once saw chaos, you now see pattern. Where you once saw randomness, you now see purpose. You move differently now, slower, yet more alive. You begin to taste what the mystics called simplicity, the state in which doing arises naturally from being. You no longer chase fulfillment, you express it. Jung wrote that the self is the principle of meaning in the individual. It's the silent intelligence that turns experience into wisdom, pain into depth, solitude into communion. Living from the self means that even ordinary moments shimmer with sacredness. Washing dishes, walking, speaking, everything becomes ritual because presence itself is prayer. You realize now that nothing ever needed to be added. The search, the striving, the endless attempts to find yourself, all were movements within the same consciousness that was already whole. The true self doesn't seek, it sees. And in that seeing, something softens forever. You forgive the past, not because it was perfect, but because it brought you here. You stop fearing the future because whatever happens will unfold within the same awareness that is watching now. This is freedom, not the freedom to escape, but the freedom to be. The true self has no ambition, yet it creates effortlessly. It has no plan, yet it lives with purpose. It doesn't need recognition because it recognizes everything. You start to understand that enlightenment is not a destination, it's intimacy with reality. To live as the self is to love the world as it is, fiercely, vulnerably, tenderly. You don't lose your humanity, you deepen it. The true self doesn't erase the person, it redeems the person. The personality becomes a window instead of a wall, a way for life to express its beauty through your particular shape. And in that revelation, the search ends, but the wonder begins. You no longer ask, "Who am I?" You ask, "What is life becoming through me?" And when you ask that question, you smile, because you already know. You are not the wave searching for the ocean. You are the ocean, remembering it is the wave. There comes a moment when even the idea of awakening fades. No more questions, no more striving, no more maps of the soul. Just stillness. Not the stillness of control, the stillness of surrender. It's not something you create. It's what remains when creation stops. The world keeps moving, people rushing, talking, building, breaking, and yet inside you there's no movement left. You watch, you breathe, you exist. The observer has no more commentary because there's nothing left to explain. This is the stillness beyond identity, the final echo of the death of the ego. You are not enlightened. You are not a teacher. You are not a seeker. You are simply here, and that is enough. For the first time, existence feels effortless. The mind no longer argues with life. Pain may still arise, but it no longer defines you. Pleasure still visits, but it no longer owns you. The pendulum of opposites keeps swinging, but you, the axis, remains still. Jung once said, "At the center of the self is a point of stillness, untouched by time." You found that point, or rather, it's found you, because you were never outside of it. You were always the stillness pretending to move, the silence pretending to speak, the infinite pretending to be small enough to learn itself. Now even that pretending ends. You begin to see the beauty of simplicity again, the taste of water, the weight of sunlight, the sound of breathing. Ordinary things shimmer with holiness. You understand what the mystics meant when they said, "When I am silent, I hear God." It wasn't poetry, or else it was precision. Because in silence, what speaks is not thought, it's being. You start to laugh at how simple it is. All those years searching, healing, fighting, and all along what you sought was this, the unmovable peace beneath every experience. You were never separate from it. You were only distracted. The stillness beyond identity is not indifference. It's intimacy. You feel the world more deeply now, not less. When someone weeps, you feel the tenderness of their sorrow in your own chest. When someone smiles, it blooms in you like light. You are both the ocean and the wave again, distinct but not divided. This is what Jung called the transcendent function, the harmony that emerges when the opposites cease their war. It's not an abstract peace, it's embodied. You move through the world gently, speaking less, listening more, acting from a place that doesn't need to prove or protect. And the strange thing is, the world responds. People sense it. They may not know why, but they feel safer near you, calmer, as if your stillness reminds them of something ancient within themselves. That's the quiet blessing of this stage. Your presence becomes medicine. You don't heal anyone. Your peace does. There's no triumph here, no "I made it," because there's no longer an I that needs to. The wave doesn't congratulate itself for returning to the ocean. It simply merges, and the merging is joy. Now the silence isn't an absence, it's fullness. The end isn't an ending, it's return. You've come home, not to a new self, but to what was never lost. And as the last illusion fades, a single understanding remains. You were never the one who died. You were the stillness watching the death. You were the light behind every shadow. And that light, quiet, patient, eternal, is still shining. If you've come this far, you already know. The death of the ego is not an ending. It's a beginning that never stops beginning. Because every time something you believed about yourself collapses, something truer emerges in its place. Every time you lose control, life breathes a little more freely through you. This is the quiet secret that Jung spent his life uncovering. The self is not something to reach. It's what's left when everything false has fallen away. So if this journey found you at the edge of your own collapse, if something in your life is dissolving, if you feel the ground slipping beneath the story of who you thought you were, remember this: you are not the one falling apart. You are the space that holds the falling. Let the old self die with dignity. Don't rush to rebuild. Stay in the silence a little longer. Because what is coming next is not another identity. It's freedom. And if these words met you where the silence begins, if you felt a small recognition in your chest, as if something ancient in you whispered yes, then you are already on the path. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like. Share this with someone who's standing at the edge of their own transformation. Not as a gesture of support, but as an act of remembrance. Because every time we awaken together, the world becomes a little more conscious. This space at this channel exists for that reason, not to give answers, but to protect the questions that wake the soul. Here, we walk through the shadows with Jung as our companion, through death and rebirth, through silence and meaning, through the quiet beauty of being human. So stay with me. Let's keep descending and rising together, through the landscapes of the psyche, through the mysteries of the soul. And when you close this video, don't rush back into the noise. Take one breath in silence. Listen. That stillness you feel, that's not absence. That's you, the one who was here before the story began and the one who will remain long after it ends. Subscribe, like, share, and let's keep awakening together.